So Brandi Love was just kicked out of Charlie Kirk's conference, and this is the legacy of Donald Trump. This is the eternal confusion that conservatives have of why are we always 10 to 20 years behind the Democrats? Basically started back with Barry Goldwater, Richard Nixon, and Ronald Reagan in the 60s, 70s, 80s, respectively, where the Republican Party continued to reformulate itself as the conservative party. Previously, it had been the Democrats, but they made that switch, and ever since then, Republicans have been fumbling and bumbling and wondering, why can't we keep our act together? Why can't we be conservative? Why can't we conserve anything? And the reason is because from the top down, there is no systemic incentive to conserve things like sexual morality in the United States. Now, if you don't know who Brandi Love is, please don't Google search her. She's an adult film actress. You know, not really my thing, but she calls herself a conservative, and the reason for that is she believes in small government. She doesn't believe in the government intervening in her life. And from my perspective, this type of conservatism, this small government conservatism, just means big corporate conservatism. And to me, the government is just a corporation with a monopoly on violence, supposedly. But looking at the current state of our democracy, what we're seeing is a political system which is run by the media. We can only vote for the people who are popular in the media. Donald Trump won in 2016 because his name was being repeated over and over and over again on every single channel. And so he won his primary, and then he won against Hillary Clinton because people disliked Hillary Clinton to a great degree and thought that Donald Trump was going to shake things up. As it turns out, the social legacy of Donald Trump is not going to be shaking things up, but doubling down on the trend that we've been on since the 1960s or earlier, which is increasing sexual liberalization. That is part of an economic paradigm where family values are no longer central to either a farming, agricultural economy or to an industrial proletariat economy. What does the average American do? What does the average so-called proletariat in a Marxist sense actually do? They consume. They're a consumer. They go to a job, a service job in the food industry, as a waiter, as a waitress, as someone who is part of something that's superfluous, something that's part of the FIRE economy, finance, insurance, real estate, entertainment. All of these things are basically salesmanship. They are selling a smile, service with a smile. This is not an essential service. This is not producing computer parts. This is not putting rockets on the moon. This is not fighting a war. This is not putting food on the table. Most of those things at this point are either automated or are handled by people who are in the process of automating them through programming, through artificial intelligence. These are the jobs of the future, and most people don't fit into that paradigm. And so if you're at the top level, there's no incentive to promote family values. And if family values aren't being promoted from the top level, I'm sorry, folks, they're not going to continue to exist. So people who are interested in sustaining those have to ask, why am I interested in sustaining those? What is the purpose of family values? What is the purpose of a family? What is the purpose of sexual morality? What are the purpose of these things? The purpose of these things is to have children. And if having children is not beneficial at the top level for reasons of overpopulation, for environmental reasons, for economic reasons, for consumeristic reasons, that you can make much more profit selling someone a Netflix subscription because it literally costs nothing. It's a digital token to gain access to bandwidth, which costs virtually nothing, versus selling a diaper. The profit margin on a diaper is a lot lower than the profit margin on a Netflix subscription. So there's a lot of incentives to decrease fertility and very few incentives to increase it. And so if that's the case, you're going to have to find an alternative incentive structure. And from my perspective, there's really three vectors for that, right? In terms of top-down incentive structures, we're talking about military, merchants, and we're talking about media or religion. And those are the three incentives. And from a military perspective, most of the military conflicts seem to be over resources, they seem to be over geopolitics, they seem to be over incentives that are fundamentally connected with the international market. There was, I believe it was Smedley Butler who wrote back in the early 20th century that as a member of the military, he was essentially working for Wall Street, right? So this has been the case for a very long time. We can go back to the Napoleonic conflict and look at international finance at that time, whose side they were on and who ended up winning that conflict. The point is that the military is not an independent entity. It doesn't have interests that are against international finance, but it's pretty much lockstep in favor of international finance. Even if the rank and file soldiers have different attitudes, their attitudes ultimately don't matter because these systems are top-down and hierarchical. So really what that leaves us with is the question of, is there any faction within a merchant class that's going to bring back family values? I think the answer is no. I think all of the incentives of capitalism, of dissolving human communities in favor of profitability and profiting off misery, basically mean no, there is no amount of money that you can use to subvert the capitalist system, because the international finance system, currency markets, crypto markets, all of it is connected. And the point at which you get to a high enough level that you could actually affect something in the billionaire class is the point at which you're most vulnerable, because you have a big target on your back. Look at Notch, creator of Minecraft, a fantastically popular series. He sold the rights to that game, became a billionaire overnight, and started tweeting out offensive things, and very quickly got canceled. Didn't matter that he had all that money. He couldn't build an alternative platform. He couldn't broadcast his views. He couldn't stand behind his views. I think fundamentally because he's kind of a weak, pudgy guy and he doesn't have a lot of backbone or spine. But I think most billionaires are like that. I think most people become billionaires because they're willing to satisfy shareholders, not because they're renegades who buck the system. That's how they'd like to present themselves in photo ops. You know, Jeff Bezos, he's standing strong in front of a space rocket, or Elon Musk, he's like, oh, I'm a wild card. But in truth, most of these people gain their money through copyright law, through abusing government contracts, or through suing their competition or insider trading, right? These are very nepotistic, legalistic, bureaucratic systems that enable these people to concentrate wealth. And at the end of the day, they can spend a degree of it in the way that they like, but if they actually buck the system to a great extent, you'd see these people go the way of someone like we heard Madoff, Bernie Madoff. Very quickly, you know, when you have billions of dollars, it's very easy to find little flaws, little flies in the ointment, and ways to attack people. Look at what happened to Trump. He is not invulnerable to attack, so there are all kinds of vectors to attack. It's a system. Finance is a system that's extremely based on networking. So there's no such thing as an independent node in international finance or capitalism. It's all connected. It's a hive mind, and it operates on superhuman or anti-human principles, depending on your perspective. It doesn't care what you want. It doesn't care what you think. It cares about what the market wants, and what the market wants is profitability. And sometimes that's antithetical to human happiness and spirituality, which leaves us with the last one, which is religion. And so if you're really interested in conservatism, if you're really interested in family values, you can't look toward the Trump movement. You can't look even toward Charlie Kirk. As much as you might want to praise him for kicking out Brandi Love, you're not going to find it in Brandi Love. You're not going to find it in the conservative movement. You're not going to find it in Charlie Kirk, because it's always going to be 10 to 20 years behind the Democrats, behind the so-called left. I say the so-called left because I believe all of this is ultimately due to capitalism. I believe it's all due to a mercantile morality, which is exactly what Brandi Love and her handlers have. It's a mercantile morality. It's a capitalist-based morality. It's my body is an object to be bought and sold on the market, to be displayed like a piece of meat. That's her morality. That is the morality of capitalism. The alternative to that is to say that there are higher principles than the material world. That's when we have to go into spirituality. That's when we have to go to religion. And so if you're interested in that, you have to be anti-capitalist, which in my opinion puts you on a deeper level of the left. The left today has been hijacked by capitalism. It's a superficial version of the left, and it doesn't represent the core of what the left really is, which is anti-establishment, anti-system. The system is against us. The system is trying to poison us with Brandi love. The Republicans are 10 to 20 years behind the poison of the Democrats. Both sides are corrupt. So we really have to think outside the box here. We really have to be willing to reject these superficial distinctions and turn people's minds around and not get trapped in this paradigm of, well, Trump is right-wing and Charlie Kirk is right-wing and I guess Brandi Love is right-wing, so I have to be allied to these people? No, we don't have to be allied to these people. We don't have to be associated with these people. We don't have to view ourselves on the same team. We don't have to say no enemies on the right. We can dissociate. We can build our own thing. We can be constructive without going into this left-right paradigm of I have to hate my family because they're on the different side of the political divide. This is not helpful. This is sports ball. This is political theater. This is bread and circuses. This is a distraction. It's democratic resentment where you have two mobs, essentially, who are constantly being fueled in resentment and hatred toward each other with Black Lives Matter on the one side, MAGA on the other side. It's totally irrelevant. It's not building anything. You're putting all your power and energy into the mercantile morality system. You need to back out of it. You need to disengage. You need to start completely fresh and new. So, hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to talk with me personally, you can follow me on Twitter, JOKKULL. That's Deep Left Jockle on Twitter. Follow me, and I'll be happy to start a conversation. Until then, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.